Over 60, discover the 4 shocking carbs to avoid and 4 amazing superfoods to transform your health. Ruth Anderson leaned back in her chair, hands trembling, heart racing. The doctor's voice echoed like a haunting melody in her mind. Words like dietary changes loomed larger than life. For years, Sunday dinners had been her sanctuary, a glorious feast filled with meatloaf, buttery mashed potatoes, and laughter that filled every corner of her quaint Midwestern kitchen. She was the matriarch, the heartbeat of her family, and now it felt like the ground beneath her was crumbling. What would they think if she couldn't cook the dishes they cherished? From the corner of her eye, she spotted Jamie, her college-bound grandson, flipping through a nutrition book on the table, innocently hopeful. The irony was bitter. The very traditions that had stitched her family together felt as if they threatened to rip apart at the seams. Could she reimagine decades of recipes without tearing away the legacy they held? She hesitated, the weight of it all weighing deeply on her. "What about my meatloaf, Grandma?" Jamie had asked with youthful sincerity, sensing her internal struggle. It pierced her heart, and she felt stuck, teetering between the impulse to help her health and the desire to preserve the warmth of family gatherings. Why did love seem tied to comfort food? As Sunday approached, she faced a moral battle every time she opened her recipe box, sifting through handwritten notes stained with joy and memories, yet haunted by looming uncertainty. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the sun crested on that fateful Sunday, the kitchen filled with nostalgia. Smells of garlic and onions wafted in the air, yet it was the kale-infused meatloaf that she wrestled with. Visibly apprehensive, Ruth stood rooted in front of the stove, stirring her grandmother's old recipe with a blend of oil and kale, half-spiritedly trying to incorporate vitality into her food. Could a handful of greens ever replace the sanctity of mashed potatoes? The very thought felt like a betrayal, but it was a route she felt compelled to take. When her family arrived, chattering cheerfully, Ruth's stomach twisted. The mingling scents tasted like ambivalence. Would they embrace her new creations or reject them outright? What if her dining room became a battleground of nostalgia versus progress, leaving her feeling more isolated than ever? As she plated the carrot cake with whole grain flour, topped with a hint of maple syrup instead of sugar, panic swept over her. With every tick of the clock, the tension thickened, a palpable heaviness as she prepared to serve. Would they see past the ingredients to the soul behind each dish? Her heart lurched with every fork lift, each clink of silverware slicing through the knot of unease in her gut. Call it courage or foolishness, she held her breath, hoping her family would recognize that love could wear a new face, even if it left her shaken. Time stood still, a fragile balance hanging by the thread of a meal. Would tradition endure, or would this dinner fracture the fabric of family history? The moment she set the kale-infused meatloaf on the table, an uncertain silence enveloped the room. Ruth's heartbeat drummed in her ears, drowning out the clinking of utensils and the first hesitant bites of her family. She watched their faces, searching for any flicker of recognition or connection to the effort she'd poured into crafting something healthier while holding on to tradition. "Wow, Grandma, this looks interesting," Jamie said, his words hanging between honesty and politeness. A wave of relief washed over Ruth when she saw him take a generous forkful. Yet anxiety gripped her as she noticed her daughter Leah's brow furrow slightly. Would the kale provoke an outright revolt? The tension was stifling, a living thing in their midst. 3 plates were balanced on her lap, hands nervously twisting a napkin. Instead of engaging in conversation, she was consumed by the thoughts swirling like storm clouds. Did she dare ask for their honest opinions, or would her vulnerability be met with criticism? What if they hated what she created? "Do you like it?" Ruth finally ventured, her voice barely more than a whisper. "It's different, but good different," Jamie ventured after a paused moment, chewing cautiously as if testing both the food and the waters of family dynamics. "Different isn't bad, right?" Ruth pressed, channeling every ounce of courage. She needed to confront her fears, to dismantle the internal narrative that labeled change as a failure. "I think it's great that you're trying new things, Mom," Leah said, her tone light yet careful. "But what's up with the kale?" An unexpected surge of determination surged within Ruth. It felt like the invasion of a long-forgotten treasure lying dormant beneath layers of resignation. She realized that what she served today transcended flavor. It echoed a deeper, personal scope of transformation. The advice from the doctor became a poignant reminder that her actions could rewrite her story, not just for herself, but for generations to come. Health isn't just about avoiding carbs, it's about exploring what we can build from the ingredients we have, Ruth replied, her voice growing steadier with each word. This isn't just food, it's a pathway to more dinners together in the future. With each forkful, the conversation shifted from fear to curiosity, her family propelled into a dialogue about health, nostalgia, and nutrition. Jamie expressed interest in cooking together, kale concoctions and all, as Leah chimed in with memories of how they'd shaped their own lives around food. Each response emboldened Ruth, stripping away her lingering doubts. As dishes were cleared, Ruth felt a rush of achievement. She had opened a dialogue not just about meals, but also about vitality and connection. Perhaps the anxiety that had once grasped her like a vice was beginning to peel back. Discovering that creativity could merge with health had illuminated a previously dim path, one that could evolve based on shared experience rather than division. In that exchange, she heard whispers of what was possible. But along with understanding her family's needs anew came a deeper realization of what she needed to face next. The daunting task of re-envisioning her entire approach to sustenance, expanding beyond just kale. The more she thought about it, the more she knew this was just the beginning. Would she dare dive deeper into these uncharted waters of health and family legacy? The echoes of the doctor's words were still alive in her mind, and she felt the courageous surge to grasp deeper, approach her new narrative head-on. As dessert was served, a revised version of the family's classic carrot cake, Ruth's anticipation mounted. What new recipes and traditions awaited her creation in the kitchen, waiting for her to discover a clearer expression of love and wellness? The moment of truth lingered ahead, and Ruth sensed that the stakes were only rising. Would she resist the fear of inadequacy or embrace this journey of transformation entirely? Ruth sat on her porch the next morning, the sun pouring golden light over the garden. The kale-infused meatloaf still lingered in her mind, but today she felt different, empowered. The taste of her family's conversation about exploration and health echoed in her thoughts, a gentle reminder of the promise she made to redefine their meals. Motivated by this new ambition, she opened her laptop and searched for recipes. She felt a rush of excitement as vibrant images of colorful dishes filled the screen. Each click opened a door to creativity she previously thought closed. Ruth's fingers danced over the keyboard, jotting down notes about nutrient-dense ingredients, culinary techniques, and possible substitutions that could maintain the integrity of beloved dishes while making them healthier. Yet, amid this enthusiasm, doubts rose. What if she gathered a cart full of superfoods only to end up disappointing her family again? Fear threatened to creep back in, pushing her towards safety and familiarity. Ruth took a deep breath, recalling her family's acceptance, how Jamie had already expressed excitement about cooking. Rejecting that fear, she leaned into motivation, committed to seeking a new balance between tradition and innovation. The thought of venturing into the local health food store filled her with trepidation. It would be filled with unfamiliar items, signs for things she couldn't pronounce. But that eagerness to learn overshadowed her intimidation. She envisioned Jamie's curious gaze following her as she navigated the aisles. Wouldn't sharing this experience deepen their bond? When she arrived, the store was a treasure trove of exotic grains, nuts, and spices that sang to her from their shelves. She picked up quinoa, amaranth, and farro. Each ingredient symbolized a bridge between her past culinary traditions and her emerging vision for a healthier lifestyle. Ruth's cart slowly transformed into a canvas of potential. "Excuse me," a voice jolted her from her reverie. A middle-aged woman stood there with a knowing smile. "Are you new to this?" Ruth nodded and explained her goals, the commitment to healthier meals and the struggle of balancing tradition. The woman's eyes sparkled with understanding as she shared her own journey of cooking for her family with healthy alternatives. Ruth felt a sense of camaraderie bloom between them, a shared narrative that reassured her that she wasn't alone in this exploration. After a lengthy conversation filled with cracked recipes and laughter, Ruth clutched her newfound treasures as she headed home, exhilarated by the connection. It occurred to her that just as she was willing to expand her cooking, she could consider reaching out to others who had forged similar paths. What if there were community classes, workshops, or even online forums where she could learn more and share experiences? Once home, the kitchen became her sanctuary, and Ruth dove into her experimentation. She chopped, sautéed, and whipped her way into new recipes. The thrill of creation surged within her veins, and she found joy in the little triumphs, producing a zesty quinoa salad and a turmeric-infused chickpea stew. Each successful dish instilled her with more confidence. However, the real test loomed ahead. Leah was hosting a small gathering at her home next weekend, and Ruth imagined herself standing there, revealing her creations. Would her children appreciate the dishes she had created with love, or would they flinch at the sight of something unusual? The pressures of expectations began to swirl as her mind raced through different scenarios. Ruth could feel the weight of impending confrontation with not only her children's reactions, but her internal fear of inadequacy. She needed to prepare herself for their responses, knowing she had embraced uncertainty and pursued commitment to wellness. As she stirred the thick sauce bubbling on the stove, Ruth recognized that this journey was more than merely cooking differently. It encapsulated a deeper evaluation of her identity and aspirations as a mother. How would this influence her relationship with her family, her perception of health, and ultimately her self-worth? With a firm resolve, she clasped the wooden spoon, reflecting on her growth, the symbiosis of traditional love and its transformation into modern culinary exploration. The gathering at Leah's would provide an opportunity, an unveiling of not just meals, but an invitation into her evolving story. Ruth's heart raced as the countdown to the event began. Would this gathering become affirmation of her transformation, or would it reveal the cracks in her resolve? As she stood there, stirring and reflecting, it was clear. The moment of truth was close at hand, and she could either shy away or embrace it fully. The choice lay ahead, with all eyes, hers and her family's, waiting to see who she had become. The day of the gathering arrived, filling Ruth with both excitement and anxiety. The sun rose lazily over the town, casting warm rays across her kitchen as she hustled to prepare everything. She had decided to push the boundaries of her cooking not only for her family, but as a statement, to showcase a newfound version of herself rooted in courage and discovery. As she arranged the vibrant ingredients for a roasted vegetable platter, doubts intruded upon her composure. What if her children turned their noses up at the vibrant dishes? Her fingers trembled slightly as she sliced bright bell peppers and kale. Each chop echoed her uncertainty. Was this really her? The idea of being an unconventional cook intimidated her, even amidst newfound enthusiasm. She thought about Jamie's support, how he had been genuinely excited to try new flavors, but questions still gnawed at her. Would Leah's friends appreciate her efforts or view her dishes as mere attempts at making health seem glamorous? Would they laugh internally as they dissected the weird, healthy portions? The stifling fear threatened to drag her back toward familiar comfort foods, a quiche, a cheesy pasta, something she knew they'd love unconditionally. Yet, despite her tumultuous thoughts, Ruth continued moving toward her vision. In a moment of clarity, she envisioned the laughter and joy they could share around the table, the stories that would flow with each new bite. With newfound determination, she arranged the quinoa salad with precision, allowing the colors to pop like fireworks, bold against the backdrop of a sad, stagnant routine. As she plated the chickpea stew in a vibrant bowl, she felt an electrifying pulse of creativity flow through her. This meal was not just about food, it was a reflection of her internal evolution, a transformation that went beyond culinary skills or dietary choices. It represented her journey into authenticity, the unveiling of a mother learning to redefine love in her family's life through food. An unexpected knock on the door pierced through her focus, jolting her back to the present. It was Leah and her guests, arriving early to help with setup. Ruth's heart raced. The kitchen, filled with the aromas of her labor, now felt like a performance stage, and she was the lead actress hoping her show would impress. "Wow, it smells amazing in here," Leah said, her enthusiasm palpable. Ruth smiled, her self-assurance teetering, but not faltering. As they discussed last-minute arrangements, she noticed a sense of camaraderie blossoming, an unspoken acknowledgement that they were all in this together. Leah's guests pitched in with good humor, arranging the dishes with care. As the clock ticked closer to the gathering hour, Ruth felt a sudden surge of empowerment. This was about more than food. It was about connection, vulnerability, and growth. She started to recite aloud her thoughts about the ingredients for the dishes she had prepared, eager to share her journey and the reasons behind each choice. She saw nods of appreciation from Leah's friends, intrigued by her enthusiasm. For the first time, Ruth began to feel that perhaps they weren't just there to accept her plates. They were there to embrace her story, her quest for health, and a renewed relationship with food and family. Then, her heart sank slightly as she thought about her children. Would they understand her motivations? Dare she reveal the full extent of her journey, her struggles, aspirations, and fears? "This is the moment," she whispered internally, acknowledging the choice that lay in front of her. Sharing this culinary narrative was akin to sharing her vulnerabilities as a mother. To stand there and unveil these dishes meant she would lay bare her soul, presenting the most authentic version of herself, unfiltered and sincere. As the door swung open and their guests flooded in, her heart raced ever harder. The time had come to face not just Leah's guests, but her own fears. Ruth felt a knot in her stomach as she caught sight of Jamie, eyes wide with curiosity. Would this gathering unravel her budding confidence or reinforce her newfound resolve? As she took a deep breath, the questions murmured in her mind, urging clarity and courage. Encouraged by the faces around her, she realized this was hers to own, a testament of strength, transformation, and love. Would they celebrate the effort she had poured into this food? Ruth took a deep breath, reminded of whom she had become. With a gentle smile, she welcomed them, bracing herself. The chance to reveal her evolution was finally here. All eyes were on her, waiting expectantly, and she was ready. But in the back of her mind, one thought pulsed insistently. Would this gathering validate her journey, or would it expose her lingering insecurities? Ruth felt the weight of the kitchen's atmosphere shift as laughter filled the air. The initial tension began to dissolve, and she found herself smiling genuinely at the liveliness around her. Distracted momentarily, she watched Leah and her friends dive into the vibrant dishes, serving themselves with childlike curiosity. This was the moment to turn the lens inward, confronting her deeper apprehensions. As Leah's friend Jenna tried the chickpea stew, Ruth's breath hitched. A quiet sense of dread gripped her. What if Jenna reacted with distaste? What if the flavors she'd painstakingly crafted didn't resonate? Yet, the way Jenna savored each spoonful, eyes widening in delight, began to embolden Ruth. "Wow, this is amazing!" Jenna exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. And as if the tension had been struck like a match, conversations flared around the table. Compliments flowed like wine, covering her insecurities in a warm blanket of affirmation. But even as she enjoyed this newfound camaraderie, Ruth could feel her thoughts racing ahead. Calm confidence flickered like a candle, competing with fears of deeper critique. She took a moment to breathe, to reposition her thoughts, turning inward again. Was their enjoyment merely reflective of kindness, a gesture of superficial support? Or was it genuine admiration for the authentic effort she poured into these dishes? Amidst the laughter and clattering of forks on plates, Ruth seized the opportunity to share her culinary journey. "This chickpea stew is inspired by my commitment to explore more plant-based meals," she began, her voice steady, yet still tinged with the remnants of her anxiety. Each word was a stride toward her authenticity, unfolding her story, laying bare her transformation. "The quinoa salad, too. It represents the heart of redefining our family meals, focusing on colors and nutrients." As she spoke, she felt the tension ease slightly, recognizing the growing interest in her story. Here, in this setting, she was gifting pieces of herself while simultaneously witnessing the joy her culinary expressions brought to others. Yet even as she engaged, a nagging worry lingered. What if her children didn't connect with this new version of their mother? Would Leah and her friends grow to admire this shift in her, or would they remain skeptical behind those encouraging smiles? The answer hung like an unresolved note within her. "Mom, your food is really good," Leah chimed in, her voice lifting Ruth's spirits. For a moment she saw Jamie's eyes sparkle, a reflection of proud support. "I told my friends about your health journey and how important it is to you. They totally get it." Those affirmations reverberated within Ruth, like a balm soothing the cracks of her earlier fears. But as the evening developed, she realized there was still much to navigate. Her children were still processing this change, and the gathering felt like an unraveling tapestry. Would her new personal philosophy translate into behavior they could emulate? Would they embrace her love of vibrant food or retreat to the comfort of what they knew? As the gathering continued, Ruth observed the juxtaposition of her cooking experimentation against their usual family meals. The pressure to maintain this balance between who she had been and who she was becoming splintered her thoughts. Awash in foundational doubts again, she knew one thing: a singular meal would not carry the totality of her journey forward. Unexpectedly, a sudden wave of realization washed over her. This wasn't just about food, it was a catalyst for familial connections and understanding of each other's evolving identities. As she caught glimpses of Jamie and Leah sharing animated stories, her heart ached, grasping that they too needed space to adjust. With a sense of determination mingling with vulnerability, Ruth made a decision. She would invite her family into her kitchen experiments, opening dialogues about food, health, and choices. The essence of this gathering was not simply a showcase of her achievements. It stood as an invitation into the heart of their home, where she could encourage their involvement and share in these explorations together. Just as she committed to this path, her thoughts swelled with possibilities. Would they take her hand in this culinary journey, or would they resist? As she pulled Leah into a warm embrace, warmth radiating between them, she felt an exhilarating anxiety ignite. This was the start of her journey being not just for herself, but for her family too. And then, before she could dwell further, Ruth overheard whispered giggles from the kitchen. There, Leah and her friends were peering at the dessert options. Would the end of this gathering bring unexpected revelations about how she could intertwine her passion projects with their youthful palates? Ruth stepped forward, curiosity piqued, wondering if dessert might just be another opportunity to bridge the generational gap, an unveiling of flavors yet to be explored together. Ruth approached the kitchen, driven by curiosity and anxiety, her mind a swirl of thoughts. The laughter from Leah and her friends contrasted sharply with the knot of uncertainty tightening in her stomach. What if the dessert didn't resonate the same way her earlier dishes had? She wanted their genuine enjoyment, not just polite approval. Peering over Leah's shoulder, Ruth saw an array of colorful fruits piled high, a cornucopia of color that mirrored the vitality she now sought in her life. "What are you all thinking?" she asked, injecting enthusiasm into her voice. "Oh, we're debating between the chocolate avocado mousse and the fruit tart," Leah exclaimed, her eyes shining with excitement. Ruth hesitated for a moment, her thoughts flickering back to her own childhood. Dessert had always been a treasured indulgence, a moment of sweetness that transcended daily routines. But here, she was faced with the task of marrying nostalgia with her modern, health-focused kitchen philosophy. "Why not both?" Ruth suggested, her heart racing. It was a small invitation into a shared culinary experience, a chance to include Leah and her friends in her journey toward healthy eating. "We can make a mini dessert station and let everyone take what they love." Leah's face lit up. "That's a great idea. We can create our own combos." Ruth felt the inviting current of creativity surge through her. She guided Leah and her friends, encouraging them to sprinkle, layer, and taste, delighting in the process. As they played with flavors, Ruth felt a newfound sense of purpose grounding her fears, transmuting them into excitement. Yet beneath that exhilaration, another thought flickered uninvited. What if her conceptualization of healthy eating didn't align with their taste preferences? Ruth's self-doubt hovered, reminding her of the potential scrutiny. How could she reconcile their youthful cravings with her commitment to nutrition without imposing her ideals too rigidly? "Do you all like coconut?" Ruth asked, as she sliced a fresh coconut for the fruit tart. Leah's friend Jenna perked up. "I love it! Can we add coconut to the mousse too?" That simple enthusiasm fueled Ruth's confidence. Why had she been so concerned? This was not just her culinary reinvention, it was a collective exploration. The taste testing, the laughter, even the occasional mess, it all spoke of a bond stronger than her fears. As they assembled the mini desserts, Ruth deliberately observed how Leah and her friends embraced the process, mixing flavors and finding joy in the aesthetics, just as she had hoped to with her family meals. It wasn't merely about the food, but the moments they were crafting together, rich with conversation and shared laughter. Yet the weight of her transformation still permeated Ruth's thoughts. Could this new relationship with food extend beyond the kitchen? In fostering this collaborative spirit, would they discover food as a means to connect, to discover, and even to understand her journey better? That nagging question lingered, casting a shadow over her burgeoning hope. "Let's take an Instagram picture," Leah suggested, giggling as they visualized their vibrant creations. Ruth felt a tug at her heart. Social media had always felt superficial to her, but here it was merely a canvas. Perhaps this was the story of their rebirth, one that would resonate with others as they embraced their personal culinary transformations. Ruth grabbed her phone, and as she focused on the vibrant desserts laid across the colorful table, a realization hit her. This shared experience could prove foundational. It held the potential to redefine their relationship with food, a communication bridge built on taste, creativity, and acceptance. Just then, Jamie entered the kitchen, his eyebrows raised in playful disbelief. "What's going on in here? Are you turning this into a cooking show?" Ruth couldn't help but smile, the playful jest striking at the heart of her transformative mission. "Maybe we are," she responded, allowing her laughter to bubble up, echoing the mingling of lightness and seriousness in her journey. As they gathered for a photo, Ruth's heart swelled with a mixture of apprehension and excitement. Could this evening be a launch pad, not just for culinary adventures, but also for soulful family interactions? There was so much yet to explore, so much to understand. With food as their backdrop, what new revelations might unfold about each other? Ruth felt a tingle run down her spine. As they captured the moment, she sensed that this was merely the beginning of a much deeper exploration into what constituted their evolving family identity, a melding of past and present flavors. But just as the mood reached a crescendo of joy, Leah's phone buzzed with a message that caught her attention. "Wait, let me see who it is," Leah said, her excitement shifting to apprehension. Ruth watched as Leah's color drained, curiosity coupled with uncertainty brewing anew. What revelation awaited them now, and how would it impact the joy they had just begun to foster in their collection of flavors and shared experiences? The room fell silent. Ruth felt the weight of Leah's apprehension ripple through the air like an impending storm. A mere text had the potential to unravel the atmosphere they had so joyfully created. The laughter, the shared creativity, all now hung precariously as Leah's fingers hovered over her phone, uncertainty written all over her face. "Leah? What does it say?" Ruth asked, her voice a mix of concern and curiosity. She knew that this was more than a simple message. It was an invitation into Leah's life that Ruth had been hesitant to embrace fully. It's a message from Jake," Leah finally said, her brows furrowing. "He wants to talk about us." Ruth's gut twisted, not because she disapproved of whatever was unfolding between Leah and Jake, but because she recognized the heavy implications that such conversations demanded. The safe bubble of laughter they had built began to crack. Leah's friends traded glances, the lightheartedness of moments before fading as the air thickened with anticipated tension. For Ruth, this was a powerful reminder of her own insecurities, how easy it was to construct a facade of happiness, only to have it shattered by the complexities of real-life relationships. Despite her growing confidence in the kitchen, her emotional ecosystem still felt fragile. "Do you want me to leave?" Jenna asked, glancing at Leah. "I can give you guys some privacy." No, Leah replied quickly, shaking her head. I need a minute." Ruth could see the struggle in Leah's expression. This was a crossroads, not just in her relationship, but in her growth as a person. Would she retreat into herself, protecting the fragile joy they had discovered in the kitchen, or would she confront this uncomfortable moment, perhaps even using it as fuel for her own self-discovery? The questions churned in Ruth's mind. "Leah, you know you don't have to hide your feelings from us. Whatever happens next, we're here for you," Ruth said softly. The words surprised her as they rang with a deeper truth. Her desire to create a safe space for Leah mirrored her own quest for validation and acceptance. But underneath it all, Ruth couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider looking into the complexities of youth. Was she truly preparing herself to teach others about resilience, friendship, and love when she often grappled with her own forms of insecurities? The culinary experience should have solidified her confidence, yet the trials in Leah's life highlighted the shadows of doubt still lurking behind her own issues. There was a part of Ruth that longed to muster the courage to address her vulnerabilities head-on, to confront the easiest way to reinforce connection and foster open communication. Doing so might just bridge the gaps that had held her back from truly knowing her family, not just through the lens of healthy eating, but through shared emotional experiences. Leah took a deep breath, and Ruth felt the change in the atmosphere as if a new energy had entered the space. "I'm going to need your advice," she said, looking directly at Ruth. "Do you think I should talk to him?" The question struck Ruth like a lightning bolt. Here was an opportunity, not just for Leah, but for her own self-realization. You know what you feel. Trust that. If you think it's important to talk to Jake, then do it. But remember, open dialogues create understanding. Leah nodded, and Ruth felt a small spark of pride. In encouraging Leah, she too was evolving. It was no longer just about executing a recipe. It was about creating a culture of openness, acceptance, and emotional nourishment. This was the growth Ruth craved not just for herself, but for her family's future interactions. Ruth glanced over at Leah's friends, witnessing their supportive nods. Perhaps this was how she could intertwine her culinary passion with the valuable life lessons she was beginning to recognize. As they prepared to withstand the storm of Leah's conversation with Jake together, a new question blossomed in Ruth's mind. Could these moments of vulnerability and courage pave the way for her own journey of self-understanding? Was she ready to face the uncomfortable truths in her life, or would she remain caught in hesitation? With Leah now shaping her own path, Ruth sensed an uncharted journey waiting ahead, not just for her daughter, but for her as well. As they reshaped their ideas of connection, what revelations might they face about themselves and each other in the process? The tension in the kitchen shifted, the anticipation thick enough to cut through the air. Ruth watched as Leah flicked her gaze from her phone to the room, processing the emotions swirling within her. It struck Ruth how pivotal these seconds were, both for Leah and herself. The dynamics of their relationship were about to deepen, and yet, Ruth felt compelled to confront her own lingering uncertainties. "Leah, do you need me to help you prepare? I could make some snacks or something," Ruth offered, almost impulsively. She craved action, a way to redirect her tension into something tangible. Cooking had always been her safe haven, a realm where she felt entirely in control. Maybe through Leah's situation, she could find a renewed sense of empowerment. "No, I think I need to handle this on my own," Leah replied, her voice more resolute than before. That simple statement ignited a flicker of admiration in Ruth. Leah was taking steps toward autonomy, unearthing her inner strength, and Ruth felt a strange blend of pride and fear. Leah's choice reflected not only her growth, but also challenged Ruth's own stagnation. While Leah bravely faced the storms of her young life, Ruth found herself hesitating to confront her fears. It nagged at her, this persistent worry that she had not yet modeled the lessons she wanted to teach. "I admire that, Leah. It's important to speak your truth," Ruth said softly, realizing she was reflecting her wisdom back to her daughter. This wasn't merely a culinary journey. It was an emotional odyssey, a revelation in which vulnerability had become a nurturing ingredient for growth. Ruth stepped away from Leah, retreating to the corner of the kitchen, looking through the pantry. Her fingers grazed jars of spices, the textures serving as a disarming contrast to the growing unease in her heart. Unbeknownst to Leah, this wasn't just about her relationship with Jake. It resonated with Ruth's silent struggle to connect with her own unresolved feelings, her marriage, her fears about aging, the isolation that accompanied years of raising kids with little acknowledgement for herself. As Leah stood poised to confront Jake, Ruth confronted her reality. She had spent years fostering safety for others, but now it was her moment to reclaim her own voice. What had kept her in the shadows, avoiding direct confrontations, be it with her husband, friends, or even life's expectations? She had become too accustomed to putting others first. "Maybe it's time to truly embrace discomfort," she whispered to herself, acknowledgement washing over her. If Leah could take a leap of faith with Jake, perhaps Ruth could learn to express her own needs and desires, to speak about the things she had kept buried under layers of obligation. A knock at the door broke her introspection. Leah stiffened, her bravado momentarily faltering. "That's him," Leah murmured. Ruth felt a shiver of fear spike through her. Would the outcome be as she hoped for Leah? Would their family remain intact in the wake of uncertainty? Whatever lay ahead was unknown, yet with Ruth's silent shift in perspective, she began to realize that discomfort could be the catalyst for transformation, not just for Leah, but for her too. As Leah glanced at the door, steeling herself, Ruth found herself instinctively reaching for a spatula, a relic of her culinary prowess, and smiled. In that moment, she understood the significance of her own choices. They were no different from Leah's. In the shadows of the kitchen, Ruth contemplated her next step. It was time to emerge from the sidelines. Would she take the leap to confront her own demons? Or would she remain ensnared by the fear of vulnerability, choosing half-truths over fulfilling relationships? Just as Leah pulled open the door to greet Jake, Ruth felt the stirrings of her own boldness. In accepting the challenge of her daughter's moment, might she finally claim her own? The sound of the door creaking open resonated, a promise of change, possibly even a confrontation of life's intricacies that would unravel ties long since knotted. With a mixture of fear and anticipation, Ruth wondered, could she finally carve out her own path amid the emotional chaos? Ruth's heart raced, a tumultuous blend of pride and anxiety swirling within her as she watched Leah open the door. Jake's presence filled the threshold, his casual ease a stark contrast to the emotional storm brewing behind the kitchen walls. As they greeted each other, Ruth felt an overwhelming urge to step in, to protect Leah from potential heartbreak, but she paused. This was Leah's moment, not her own. The conversation that unfolded was tense, yet revealing. Ruth remained in the peripheral, observing how Leah wielded her own voice, articulating her feelings with a clarity that made Ruth's own throat tighten. Leah spoke of her fears, her hopes, each carefully chosen word marking boundaries, asserting her agency. It became clear to Ruth that this confrontation was not only a rite of passage for Leah, but also a mirror reflecting Ruth's unaddressed silences. In this reflection, a sense of urgency propelled Ruth forward. Leah's voice, resonating with newfound strength, began to pull at the threads of Ruth's own untold stories. Memories flooded her mind, showcasing unvoiced grievances and dreams long shelved. Could she truly embrace this moment of vulnerability, or would she find herself retreating again? Her grip tightened around the spatula as Leah engaged, her assertiveness igniting something dormant within Ruth. As Leah and Jake's dialogue ebbed and flowed, Ruth retreated into her thoughts. She thought of all the times she had shied away from being unapologetically herself, how often she had accepted unsatisfactory truths to keep the peace, to hold everyone else's expectations above her own. What were her own truths? What dreams had she tucked away, believing they no longer mattered? Suddenly, Leah's voice broke through the fog of Ruth's reverie. "Jake, I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it isn't. I need honesty." The words hung in the air, palpable, stirring Ruth's own long-buried desire to speak her truth. Could she do the same? As Leah continued her dialogue with Jake, Ruth felt the protective instinct flare within her. But instead of jumping in, she sought strength in stillness, an unfamiliar approach, yet tantalizingly liberating. What would it mean to be rooted in her own authenticity, like Leah? With each passing moment, the distance between Leah's courage and Ruth's hesitance began to close. It was time to confront the reality that had been hovering in the background for far too long. Venturing into her own discomfort could lead her to a place of growth, just as it did for Leah. Then, as if fate were conspiring, their eyes met briefly across the kitchen. Leah, in the middle of her emotional revelations, looked to Ruth for encouragement. Something within Ruth shifted in that instant. Her daughter needed her strength, but perhaps the greatest lesson Ruth could impart was the example of her own vulnerability. "Leah," Ruth's voice broke through, a thread of uncertainty weaving through her tone. Leah turned to her, the inviting warmth of their relationship a palpable entity in the room. "I need to tell you something important, too." The tension shifted again, this time toward Ruth. The spatula slipped from her hand, landing with a soft thud on the countertop, a symbol of her intent to step out of her role as passive observer. The air buzzed with potential, anticipation pooling at the intersection of their two journeys. What would she say? Would she finally express the convictions that had been stifled for too long? As she gathered her thoughts, ready to lay bare everything she had kept buried, the door swung open again, this time to invite another unexpected visitor, one whose presence could alter the course of this delicate moment. The air thickened once more, tension spiraling anew, as Ruth braced herself for the possibility of facing not just her own truths, but also whatever lay ahead. Would she seize the opportunity to ignite her own transformation? Or would she falter once more, lost in the noise of others? Her mouth opened slightly, and the words began to form, just as the handle pushed down, heralding a new arrival, an opportunity for change, or perhaps another challenge to overcome. Ruth watched with bated breath as the door swung open, revealing the unexpected visitor. It was her husband, Mark, stepping into the room with a casualness that belied the weight of their past conversations. The tension thickened, the simmering emotions nestled in the air, waiting to be released. Here was another opportunity for openness, a chance to confront the truths they had both stifled for far too long. "Ruth, I got your text about the dinner," Mark said, his tone light but his eyes searching. "I thought I'd stop by and see what you've been cooking up." Ruth's stomach twisted. She hesitated. How could she reveal her transformation while grappling with the uncertainties of their marriage? Yet, something within her knew this moment was pivotal, not just for Leah, Jake, or herself, but for her relationship with Mark. "Actually, I was just about to share something important with Leah," Ruth began, her voice steady, glancing at both her daughter and husband. "But it seems we might all be in need of a conversation." Mark paused. Understanding flashed across his face. He could see the shift in Ruth. The determination that had been absent for so long now pulsated in the very air around them. "I'm listening," he said. And for the first time in ages, Ruth felt the space between them shift from apprehension to possibility. "Together we've been navigating our family traditions, and I've realized something crucial. Not just about food, but about life," Ruth said, finding her voice weaving stories of her culinary metamorphosis into the tapestry of their lives. "These meals have always been a way to connect, to share love, but they can also represent who we want to become. I want to embrace change, not just in my recipes, but in how we communicate as a family." Leah looked between her parents, encouragement glimmering in her eyes as Ruth continued. "I've held back for too long, pretending that everything is fine. But the truth is, I have my own needs, aspirations, and fears that often kept me from truly connecting with you both." Mark shifted, his expression softening as he listened. "I never wanted you to feel like you had to hide anything. I want to be part of this journey too," he admitted, his tone earnest. The moment felt monumental, like the vital ingredients effortlessly blending into a vibrant dish. Ruth felt herself standing on a precipice of newfound clarity. She took a deep breath and plunged in. "I've struggled with feeling like I've lost parts of myself in the chaos of parenthood. I want to regain my voice, to inspire connection through vulnerability, not just in our meals, but in our conversations as well." Tears glistened in Leah's eyes as she nodded, recognizing her mother's growth. "Mom, this is what I've needed to hear," she said, her voice crackling with emotion. "We can do this together. We're all figuring things out, and I want to support you too." As if a dam had burst, Ruth felt her own flood of doubts easing. Instead of crumbling under the weight of emotions, she could build on them, a newfound perspective aligning with the lessons she wanted to impart. "There's no perfect recipe for life," she exclaimed, enthusiasm bubbling over. "It's all about blending, tasting, adjusting, and above all, embracing what flavors emerge from our challenges." Mark moved closer, promising understanding, a silent vow to be more present in their family's transformation. "We can all explore this new journey together. Let's not hold back anymore. We can iterate as we go." That simple statement felt like watching a cake rise in the oven. She sensed the layers building, the bonds strengthening, and each acknowledgement of vulnerability adding scoops of richness to their shared narrative. Ruth glanced back at the kitchen counter, where the colorful desserts lay waiting, a representation of both celebration and openness. "Let's make a promise to embrace change, not only through the meals we share but in our conversations too. It's time we open our hearts, just as we've opened our minds to new ingredients." Ruth felt a sense of warmth enveloping her, filling the cracks that had emerged over the years. As the evening unfolded, they gathered around the table, not just to savor delicious dishes, but to digest the deeper meanings they now held. With each forkful, laughter echoed, layered with stories of vulnerabilities and hopes. Cell phones capturing moments became a backdrop of connection rather than distraction. Ruth felt empowered, recognized not just as a mother or a cook, but as an individual, forging new pathways, battling uncertainties, and growing into the person she had always envisioned. Their familial bond grew stronger, fortified by authenticity and shared experiences, and as they finished their colorful desserts, Ruth's heart swelled with pride. Facing her fears had forged a new recipe for love and understanding, one built on the foundations of honesty, bravery, and resilience. Encouraged by her family's responses, Ruth stepped forward, choosing to embrace the transformations unfolding at every level. The gathering marked a beginning, not just for Leah's journey, but for her own rebirth in courage and self-acceptance, embarking into the complexities of life with an open heart. With newfound confidence, Ruth spoke into the future, knowing that life's messiness embraced opportunity, and each shared meal echoed with the laughter of hope. This was only the beginning of a new culinary adventure, a celebration of growth, health, and family like never before. Refuel your inspiration through these incredible transformations. Subscribe immediately to this channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others see this journey. Comment your reactions and theories about this extraordinary ending. We want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to show your support. Every action counts. Don't wait even one more second to share your favorite personal overcoming stories.